I'm going to read for you Luke chapter 14, verse 15 till 24. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he, that's Christ, unto him, A certain man made a great supper, and bade many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all with one consent. So they all agreed together. It wasn't an individual thing here and there, it's all one agreement. And all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I've bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray to have me excused. And another said, I've bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee have me excused. And another said, I've married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. Okay, let me stop for here for a moment and give a commentary upon this. So you have this guy, let's say he's a local nobleman. I don't know what the supper was about. Maybe it was his son was about to get married, or maybe it was the king that was celebrating that Rome acknowledged his rulership. I don't know what it was. But for the parable's sake, let's say it was a celebration for something. He got a promotion. Let's say he was a local ruler, a nobleman or a king, anything of that rank, and he got a promotion. He extended. He became more prosperous in the area, and he wanted to celebrate this. So he sent invitations to many people. Not too few, too many. So at supper time, that means when all the food was prepared and people only had to come and be present, he sent out his servants to bring all the people. So the people didn't even have to make any effort to come. The servant went out with chariots to pick us up. Remember, he invited many. And the only way you can bring many into your house is if you arrange your transportation. And transportation at the time was slow and, in some cases, expensive. So not only didn't those people have to make any effort to go to his place, he arranged the transportation for them. But the guy that led the transportation had to turn back with empty chariots, because every one of them made excuses. Now, you may look those excuses. One said, I've bought a piece of ground and I must go and see it. Hold on a minute. Can't that wait for the next day? If you buy a piece of ground, you don't buy a piece of ground without seeing it first. Don't let anyone fool you. If you go, even today it's like this, you go out there to purchase a plot of land, you cannot purchase it without seeing it first. That's not going to happen. So this whole excuse of I bought a plot of land and I need to go and see it, it's a lie. It's not true. It doesn't even add up when you think about it. And another thing, Christ lived on the Roman rule. And on the Roman rule, after you saw a piece of land and you purchased it, you're registered at a local municipality or at the local government. So if you purchased it already, you don't even have to go and see it. Well, let's continue. Another said, I've bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. Hold on a minute. If you buy oxen, well, you use oxen for transportation, because you didn't have cars or bicycles at that time. So you use animals. Horses you use for long distance, and oxen you use for short distances. Now look, before you purchase oxen, you go to the farmer to see the healthy condition of the animals you're about to purchase. Because remember, once you purchase the animals, you need to feed them every day. And that's going to cost money. So nobody first purchase a yoke of oxen and then go and proves it. That's the reverse logic over here. And I said, I've married a wife, therefore I cannot come. That's not a reason at all. if you've been invited by one of the local nobles or the king or whatever position he has, you arrive there with your wife will be an honor to your wife, because she attended the feast of someone quite important as the husband of, and her husband was invited. So what the heck is that? That's not, I don't think we're going into this. That excuse doesn't, you don't even have to think about it. It just doesn't add up. So let's continue. So that servant came and shewed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city. So it was in a city. So that's why at supper time he could send out his chariot and pick up all those people. It's not like they lived at the countryside and took hours to go there. So the people knew this man. He was in their city, and cities at the time had between, I believe, around 5,000 till 20,000 inhabitants. Cities were not that enormous. Some cities were, but those were exemptions. So, when you examine this parable until now, you'll see that these people had no reason whatsoever not to give in to the invitation. Okay, and the servant said, Lord, it is done as I commanded, and yet there is room. And the Lord said unto the servant, go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you, none of these men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. Now look, what is this about? Look at the context of this parable. The context is, you have a local nobleman, someone of high importance in the community. It can be that he's the king of that jurisdiction, or maybe he is the local governor, or I don't know, let's leave his title and his position behind. He is a local significant figure in the community. He lives in the city, so people know him. He can't hide being that wealthy, rich individual in the city. So actually, he invited the whole city, kind of, to his house to be present at the supper. Now, why didn't the people want to come? You can see clearly the excuses don't add up. Their excuses aren't even believable. Their excuses are a joke. Now look at this. If you have a local nobleman that invites the whole community to his place, he even arranged transportation, why wouldn't you want to be there? The only reason why you wouldn't want to be there is if you have any investment against that man. Because if in your social life you have invested against that man, and now you're at his house eating his food, people come to look at you and call you a hypocrite, and they come to call you out on it. So it's all about pride saving face. They couldn't stand this rich man, but to come out clearly they can't stand him would have consequences for them. Because remember, at the time it were the local rich that provided jobs. Now, I'm not saying that those people were employed at the man, but nevertheless, the local rich were important to the economy. So, if you had anything against the local rich actors, doors were closed to you. Doors for you, those were closed. And in the Roman Empire, it was very important to have good social contacts, good social connections. Whether you were in Rome directly, or you were at some township or some town in Ireland that was partly occupied by Rome, you needed to have good social connections. And here's the thing, those people understood this. So to go against this local nobleman directly would bring awkward consequences on them. They didn't want that. But at the same time, they didn't want to give up their negative attitude against this man. So they both wanted to invest negatively against the man, seeking relief. That's what they were doing. They wanted to put him in a black box, make him the guilty one so that they are at ease. And at the same time, they wanted to have the benefits of being on good terms with him. Now look, even if they came out openly against them, they still would be wrong, because their hostility would cause harm to the community. They didn't want to be held accountable nor responsible for what they did to the community, but they didn't want to repent either. So they sought for an excuse so that they won't have to face themselves. They all with one consent is written here, so they all agreed that none of them would partake at the supper of that nobleman. That nobleman understood clearly what was going on. Impossible that in a city, remember cities were at a max 20,000 people at the time. There were some exceptions. Impossible that in the whole city, everyone is occupied at the moment the supper is finished. They only would have spent there a few hours eating supper, and then they would go home. But nobody could come, but they live in the same city. What? That doesn't add up. If you lived 50 kilometers away, I could understand you said, sorry, I can't come. Because if I need to go back home, maybe robbers on the street. Such an excuse would have made sense. But you can't live in the same city. Geographically quite close. And you can't even attend a supper. So this man not giving in, this nobleman not giving in to the rejection of the people, says, you know what? These people want to operate in rejection, I'm not going to fight them. Other folks I'm going to push to come in. So the people that normally wouldn't be considered were now considered. The blind, the lame, the cripple, those folks were also treated badly by the community. They now came in. And his house was filled. Not by those that were originally invited, but by those who were willing to receive. And now, many theologians use this parable and use it to explain it like this. The house of Israel rejected Christ as Savior. That's why the Gentiles could now be grafted in. I'm not going into that theology right now. That's the interpretation many theologians gave to this parable. But this parable, I'm telling you, is not about the house of Israel or about ethnicity. This parable reveals unto you that there will be times, and I'm speaking to believers now, there will be times when folks will agree against you. They can't agree against you openly because that would trigger consequences on their behalf. If they act out hostile towards you in public, they now will have to face that every time. Now they now need to explain it. And their hostility will affect the community around them. So then others want them to explain why they're hostile. And they can't explain it because there is no reason for it. There are times folks will agree against you, but they can't come out openly for it. So they will come with excuses to preserve their own will, because they don't want their will to be challenged. To have their will challenged means that they now have to comply with justice. They don't want that. They want to be left alone. So they're operating in a negative, and they will blame you, while you have nothing to do with them persisting in injustice. Yeah, they'll blame you. Now, what do you do in such a situation? In this parable, that nobleman saw through the excuses of those people, because remember that the excuses don't even add up. He decided, you know what? You guys are willing to receive, others will receive. He just moved on. But he didn't forget about the rejection. He didn't pretend that the rejection never happened. He didn't sort of forget the past and move on in the future, as many said. He reflected on what people did and on their attitude and remembered it, so that his household would remain safe. And here's the thing, he put other people in his place. Because now, that nobleman gained new friends. He gained new social contacts. He expanded himself. So now, that man, over time, he got another support group. And politically speaking, that was a wise move. Because remember, he had enemies in his own community. Because those folks that gave him excuses they were enemies. But now, those enemies would see many other people around that guy. And when they see many other people around them, they'll now back off. Because they'll realize this nobleman is not isolated. If any one of us even thinks about taking action against him, one of those people that receive much of his kindness will defend him. And those people don't really have much to lose. So if they lose it against us, we're in trouble. So he didn't only just move on, not give in to the rejection, he also took action to hinder his enemies from coming too close to him. You get what I'm saying here? Look at the bigger picture. All those people that filled that house that night at that supper received kindness, and they'll never forget that kindness. They don't know who that nobleman is. They're also going to hear about the rejection of the community. And they're all going to be shocked, because they're going to think, we are the type of people that are seldom invited to places. You guys are invited, you guys are proud. So now, their bad attitude the news has spread around. So now the enemies of that nobleman were in a very uncomfortable situation. But here's the thing, that nobleman, he acted wisely. He made sure he not only had a replacement, but that he also had a defense against his enemies. Because those folks with excuses were enemies. Enemies in disguise. And let me tell you one thing, believer. You will have enemies in disguise. You will. Don't bother with those that act out against you in public. Those are just people that are desperate to dump their negative energy. And those people quickly destroy themselves. The more dangerous ones are those who invest against you, but at the same time, they don't want any consequence for investing against you. So they will meditate negatively on you, and through psychic attacks, they will harm you, or they will spread negativity, negative news about you, lies, so that others may be triggered against you. While at the same time, they remain at ease and left alone. You have such folks. But what do you do when you're dealing with such folks? Remember who they are. Don't just forget about it, so-called. Don't just forget about it. No, remember it, but take proactive action. Make sure there is replacement. I told you this before. If God removes 5 people from you, replace them with 10. Or begin to associate with 10 others. If God removes 10 people from you, begin to associate with 20. Always remain active, socially, economically, so that you will have replacement. Because you don't know who will become a covert enemy. Some people become your enemy for the mere fact that you're prosperous. They don't want to be active. And prosperity can only work for you if you're active. They don't want to be active. So just don't want anyone around them to be active, so they feel good about their laziness. So when you are prosperous, I don't talk about being a workaholic and destroying yourself, but when you are prosperous, things are happening for you, some folks will just turn on you just like that. It will happen. And you don't know whom those folks will be that will turn on you. So always remain active, so that replacements will happen automatically. Because this is the error many make. Once they reach a state of comfort financially, or better economically, they stop. They lose interest in everything else. And the few people that supported them, they cling onto them. And they have this expectation, that's how it's going to be until they die. But I'm telling you, don't have that mentality. This mentality is very dangerous. Always be active so you will operate in prosperity, because replacements will be needed for you. And for 2019, look, if you're watching this video later in 2019 or in later years, it counts for you at that moment. But this message is a message for 2019. It's my so-called New Year's message. I recorded one New Year's message before, but this is a second one. I'm telling you, in 2019, you will have folks turning on you. You will have hidden enemies. And the only reason they remain hidden is because it will be too costly for them to act against you publicly. But some of those hidden enemies, once they have enough, because you keep prospering, and their anger remains with them, they'll act out. They'll begin to riot. And some people will experience that also. The folks will riot against you. It will happen. But anticipate what will happen by remaining active, by remaining prosperous. Do not cling onto a group of friends. Do not cling onto family or relatives